Sir, I need you to confirm, did you authorize a charge of $41,000 at the Magnolia Grand Ballroom tonight?
Say that number again.
$41,000. The charge posted 6 minutes ago. Our fraud system flagged it as unusual activity.
There's no way that's real. I haven't used that card in 2 weeks.
The card was used tonight, sir. Would you like us to freeze the account?
Freeze it. Freeze it right now.
He hung up, and for a moment, he sat completely still in his car, engine idling, streetlights blinking against the windshield like something out of a dream he hadn't asked to have. Then he pulled up the bank's app, watched the transaction blink onto his screen in real time. Magnolia Grand Ballroom, a venue 40 minutes across town that he had never once set foot in. He typed the address into his phone and put the car in drive. 3 weeks earlier, Daniel had noticed the first crack. It was small, the kind of thing a person could talk themselves out of if they wanted to. Vanessa had started taking calls in the bathroom, running the faucet the entire time, as if the sound of water could swallow her voice. She'd started dressing up on Tuesday nights for girls' dinners that never seemed to include the friends he'd actually met over the 6 years of their marriage. He'd asked her about it once, gently, the way you'd nudge a door that might be locked. "You've been busy lately," he said, setting 2 plates of pasta on the table. Vanessa didn't look up from her phone. "Work's been a lot. You used to complain about work. Now you just go quiet when I ask." She finally met his eyes, and there was something there. Not guilt exactly, more like calculation, like she was deciding how much truth the moment could survive. "I don't want to fight, Daniel." "I'm not fighting, I'm asking." "Then stop asking." She stood, took her plate to the sink even though she hadn't touched the food, and disappeared upstairs. He sat alone at the table that night, the steam rising off his pasta, and told himself it was stress. People got distant under stress. He told himself that for 3 more weeks, right up until his phone lit up with a fraud alert from his own bank while he sat in his car outside his own office, 40 minutes from a ballroom he'd never heard of. There were other signs, if he let himself look back honestly. The new lock on her home office door, the one she said was for work privacy. The way she'd started sleeping with her phone face down on the nightstand, screen dark, a habit she'd never had before. The Thursday, she came home smelling like a cologne that wasn't his, and when he mentioned it, she said it was probably from a crowded elevator downtown, and he'd nodded and let it go because the alternative felt too large to hold. His best friend, Tobias, had noticed it too, the 2 of them grabbing beers on a Sunday afternoon while a game played unwatched on the bar's television. "You seem different lately," Tobias said. "Quieter." "Vanessa's been distant," Daniel admitted, turning his glass in slow circles on the bar top. "I don't know. Maybe it's nothing. Or maybe it's something," Tobias said carefully. "You'd tell me if you thought it was something, right?" Daniel had laughed it off then, said something about marriage having seasons, about how 6 years in, things naturally cooled and reheated. He believed his own words at the time. He wanted to believe them. Belief, he would learn later, was often just fear wearing a calmer face. The night before the fraud alert came in, Vanessa had kissed him goodbye at the door with an ease that, looking back, felt rehearsed. A woman performing the last scene of a role she was about to retire from. "I'll be back Sunday," she'd said, suitcase wheels clicking against the tile. "Don't wait up for calls. I'll probably have bad signal out there." He hadn't thought anything of it. He'd gone back inside, poured himself a drink, and settled in for a quiet weekend that never arrived. The Magnolia Grand Ballroom sat behind a row of manicured hedges, its windows glowing gold against the dark. String lights wound through the trees out front like something built for a fairy tale. Valets in black vests jogged between cars. A calligraphed sign near the entrance read, in looping silver script, "Vanessa and Marcus. Forever begins tonight." Daniel stared at the sign through his windshield for 11 full seconds before his brain allowed the words to mean what they meant. He got out of the car. His legs felt like they belonged to someone else. Inside, the ballroom pulsed with music and laughter, round tables draped in white linen, a live band playing something warm and celebratory. At the front, under an arch wrapped in white roses, stood his wife, his actual, legal wife. in a wedding gown, holding hands with a man Daniel had never seen in his life. A guest near the door turned, saw him standing frozen in the entrance, and frowned. "Sir, this is a private event." "I know," Daniel said quietly. "I'm the husband." The guest blinked. "The what?" Daniel didn't answer. He was already walking, each step landing heavier than the last, the room tilting slightly at the edges like he might be sick. Heads turned as he passed. Someone gasped. A woman near the cake table dropped her champagne glass, and the sound of it shattering on the marble floor cut through the music like a gunshot. The band kept playing for 3 more seconds before the drummer noticed something was wrong and let the beat die. Vanessa turned. Her face went the color of the tablecloths. "Daniel," her voice cracked in half. "What are you doing here?" "Funny," Daniel said, and his own voice surprised him with how calm it sounded, how steady, even as his hands shook at his sides. "I was about to ask you the same thing." The man beside her, tall, tan, wearing a tux that probably cost more than Daniel's monthly mortgage, stepped forward like he intended to be useful. "Buddy, I don't know who you are, but you need to leave." "I'm her husband," Daniel said. "The one whose credit card just paid for this ballroom." A ripple moved through the crowd. Somewhere behind him, a phone camera lifted into the air. "Daniel, please," Vanessa said, her hands trembling around her bouquet. "Not like this, not here." "You didn't invite me to your own wedding," Daniel said, and something in his chest finally cracked open, releasing 6 weeks of quiet dread all at once. "But you invited my bank account." Marcus stepped closer, chest puffed out like a man who'd rehearsed this moment in a mirror and never expected to actually need it. "Look, man, I get that this is a shock, but Vanessa told me the divorce was already finalized. She's not your wife anymore." Daniel let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "Is that what she told you?" "She showed me papers," Marcus said, though his voice had started to waver, the confidence slipping like sand through fingers. "Papers," Daniel repeated. He turned to Vanessa. "You forged divorce papers?" "I didn't forge anything," Vanessa said quickly, too quickly, her eyes darting toward the guests now leaning in from every table, phones raised, the whole room holding its breath around them. "I filed. I started the process. I told you I was going to." "You told me you wanted couples counseling," Daniel said. 3 weeks ago, in our kitchen. You said you wanted to fix things." "I said a lot of things I didn't mean." The words landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water, and the silence that followed rippled outward, guest to guest, until even the caterers near the kitchen doors stood frozen mid-step. Daniel's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out without thinking, some part of him grateful for anything that wasn't Vanessa's face. It was the bank. A text this time. "Fraud alert resolved. Account frozen per your request." A second charge attempt of $8,200 was declined at 8:04 p.m. Magnolia Grand Ballroom, catering services. Daniel looked up. "You tried to run my card again." 2 minutes ago." Vanessa's face drained of whatever color remained in it. "I needed to pay the caterers," she said, her voice thin now, stretched tight. "The card on file bounced, So you used mine, again, without asking, while marrying another man. It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Vanessa?" Daniel's voice rose for the first time, cracking the calm he'd been holding on to like a rope in a storm. "Explain it to me. Explain it to all of them." He gestured at the 200 faces frozen around the room, at the roses, at the 4-tier cake with a topper of 2 porcelain figures holding hands. "Tell everyone here how you planned a whole wedding, paid a caterer, a florist, a band, a photographer, with money I earned, while I sat at home thinking my marriage was struggling but still alive." Vanessa opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Marcus stepped between them, one hand raised like a referee. "Okay, let's everyone just breathe. For a second." "Don't," Daniel said. And something in his tone made Marcus actually step back. "You get to keep your dignity tonight if you stop talking right now." A woman near the front, older, silver-haired, wearing a corsage that marked her as family, rose slowly from her seat. "Vanessa," she said, voice trembling, "is this true? You're still married? Mom, please, answer me." Vanessa's shoulders folded inward, the bouquet slipping from her fingers and landing soft against the white carpet runner. "Yes," she whispered. "Technically, yes." The word technically seemed to detonate something in the room. A cousin near the back stood and walked straight out the double doors, shaking her head. Two bridesmaids exchanged a look that said everything neither of them would say out loud. Somewhere, a child asked their parent what was happening, and the parent said nothing, just pulled the child a little closer. Daniel felt the eyes of the room on him now, not on Vanessa, on him. The wronged husband standing in a rented suit jacket in a room full of strangers who'd been fed a story that apparently never included his existence. "How long," he said quietly, "has this been going on?" Vanessa didn't answer. "How long, Vanessa?" 8 months, she said finally, barely audible. 8 months. Daniel did the math without wanting to. 8 months ago was their anniversary dinner. 8 months ago was the night she'd cried and told him she felt like they were finally getting back to who they used to be. "You told me you loved me 8 months ago," he said, "at the restaurant on 5th Street. You cried." "I did love you," Vanessa said, and for the first time her voice broke into something that sounded almost human, almost real. I fell out of it, somewhere along the way, and I didn't know how to tell you, so I let it keep going." "You let it keep going," Daniel repeated, "by planning an entire wedding behind my back and charging it to my card." "I was going to pay you back." "With what money, Vanessa? You haven't worked in 2 years." The silence that followed was so complete that Daniel could hear the ice melting in someone's abandoned champagne glass 3 tables away. "I want to take 30 seconds to talk about something that actually matters if you're someone who loves stories like this one. Stories like Daniel and Vanessa's don't write themselves. Every twist, every gasp, every moment where the whole room goes silent, that's structure. That's craft. If you've ever wanted to write stories that hit this hard, that keep people glued to the screen the way you're glued right now, I put everything I know into a book called Script to Screen, the AI-assisted and original blueprint for writing viral stories that actually hit. It breaks down exactly how hooks, escalation, and twists are built, step by step, so you can create stories that actually land. Whether you're writing them yourself or using AI to help you get there faster. And if you're building videos with AI characters, the kind that need to look like the same person from scene to scene, shot to shot. I also wrote same face, every frame. The creator's playbook for consistent AI characters across Flow AI, Whisk, Midjourney, and beyond. It's the guide I wish existed when I started. And it'll save you hours of frustration trying to keep your characters looking consistent across every frame. Both links are in the description below. Now, back to that ballroom, because Vanessa is about to say something that will make every single person in that room, including Daniel, go completely still. "I wasn't just going to pay you back," Vanessa said, her chin lifting slightly, some old defiance rising up through the wreckage of the moment. "I was going to let you keep the house. That was the plan. I take the savings, you take the house, we both move on. I thought that was fair." "You thought stealing $49,000 from me to fund your wedding to another man was fair," Daniel said slowly, like he was testing whether the words could possibly be true even as he said them. "It's not stealing if it's community property. We're still married, Vanessa. There is no divorce. There is no settlement. There is no split. There is just you, spending my money on a wedding to a man I've never met, while lying to my face for 8 months. Marcus, who had been standing frozen through most of this, suddenly turned to Vanessa with an expression Daniel almost felt sorry for. "Wait," he said slowly. "The house. You told me the house was already in your name. You told me the divorce was final in March. Marcus, you told my mother we were getting a joint account after the wedding," Marcus continued, his voice climbing now, panic breaking through the polish. "You told her you'd already sold your half of a house that apparently still has him living in it. I was going to handle it." "When?" Marcus's voice cracked. "Tonight, after the vows. Were you going to tell me during the first dance?" The room, somehow, grew even quieter. Daniel almost Almost. Felt a strange kinship with the man standing across from him in a rented tuxedo, both of them realizing in real time that they'd been standing on the same lie from two different angles. "You should probably know," Daniel said to Marcus, "that she asked me for a loan 4 months ago. Said it was for a medical bill. $11,000. He looked at Vanessa. "Was that for this too? The dress? The ring?" Vanessa's silence answered for her. Marcus stepped back from her like the floor beneath the altar had suddenly become unstable. "You used his money," he said slowly, working it out loud, "to plan our wedding, while telling him it was for a medical bill, while telling me you were already divorced." He shook his head, the string lights above catching the sheen of sweat forming at his temple. "How much of tonight is actually real?" "All of it," Vanessa said desperately. "I love you, that part is real." "But the money isn't yours," Marcus said. "None of it. The dress, the flowers, the band, the cake, none of it is yours." "I was going to make it right." "When, Vanessa?" Daniel and Marcus said it at almost the exact same time, and for one strange, suspended second, the two men who had every reason to hate each other looked at one another with something that resembled understanding. The mother of the bride, Vanessa's mother, the silver-haired woman with the corsage, rose fully now and walked to the center aisle, positioning herself between her daughter and the arch of white roses like she meant to physically hold the ceremony back with her own body. "I want everyone to know," she said, her voice carrying clean across the ballroom, "that I did not know about any of this. I was told my daughter's divorce was finalized in the spring. I was told this man," she gestured toward Daniel, "had moved to another state and wanted nothing to do with any of this. I flew in from Denver believing I was watching my daughter start a new life, not watching her destroy an old one that was apparently still standing. Mom, please, not in front of everyone." "Everyone is already here, Vanessa." Her mother's voice trembled, but she didn't back down. "Everyone already knows now. The only question left is whether you're going to tell the truth or keep lying to the people who love you." Daniel watched Vanessa's face crumble in real time, watched 30 years of careful image-building collapse under the weight of 200 witnesses and a bank alert she never expected him to receive. "Fine," Vanessa said, her voice shaking now, tears finally breaking free and cutting tracks through her makeup. "You want the truth? The truth is I was drowning. Daniel worked constantly. I sat in that house alone for years feeling invisible, and then Marcus made me feel like I existed again, and I know that doesn't excuse what I did. But I was desperate, and desperate people make choices they regret." "You don't regret it," Daniel said quietly. "You regret getting caught. There's a difference, Vanessa, and you know it." She didn't answer, because there was nothing left to say that wouldn't prove him right. An older man near the front row, silver-tied and formal, cleared his throat and rose halfway from his seat. "I'm the officiant," he said, holding up a small leather-bound book like it might grant him some authority over the chaos. "I was told this would be a straightforward ceremony. I need to know if I'm needed here tonight, because I have another booking at 9. "You're not needed," Daniel said, without looking away from Vanessa. "There's nothing here to officiate." The officiant sat back down slowly, tucking his book against his chest like a shield. A young woman near the front, one of the bridesmaids, her makeup already streaked from crying, stood and crossed the aisle to stand beside Vanessa's mother. "I knew something felt off," she said quietly, mostly to herself, though the silence carried her words to every table. She kept changing the story about the ring. First she said Marcus's grandmother's, then she said it was custom-made. I should have asked more questions. "We all should have," Vanessa's mother said, her voice hollow now, drained of the fire it had carried minutes earlier. "But we trusted her. That's what family does." Vanessa flinched at the word trusted, as if it had physical weight, as if someone had thrown it at her instead of simply said it. Somewhere near the back of the ballroom, a man in a dark suit had been standing quietly near the exit for the last several minutes, watching the entire scene unfold with the calm patience of someone who had done this exact job many times before. He stepped forward now, holding up a small leather folder. "Excuse me," he said. "I'm the event coordinator. I need to know if this ceremony is proceeding because the officiant needs an answer, and frankly, so does the catering staff, since half of tonight's charges were just declined." The absurdity of the moment, a wedding hanging in the balance not because of love or lack of it, but because of a declined credit card transaction, seemed to hit the entire room at once. Someone near the back let out a short, disbelieving laugh, quickly stifled. "There's no ceremony," Daniel said. "There can't be. She's still my wife." The coordinator turned to Vanessa. "Ma'am, I need something in writing within the hour or the venue reverts to a cash-only balance, and based on what I'm seeing here, I don't think that balance is getting paid tonight." Marcus had gone very still, staring at Vanessa like he was seeing her for the first time. Not the woman in the dress, not the woman who'd laughed at his jokes for 8 months, but someone else entirely. Someone he'd never actually met. "I need to go," Marcus said finally, quietly, to no one and everyone. I can't be here right now." "Marcus, don't." He held up a hand, the same gesture Daniel had used minutes earlier, and Daniel felt a strange, unwanted flicker of solidarity pass between them again. "Just don't." Marcus turned and walked down the aisle, past rows of stunned guests, past the 4-tier cake, past his own mother sitting frozen with her napkin still folded in her lap, and out through the double doors into the night. Vanessa didn't chase him. She stood alone at the altar now, the white roses arching above her like the frame of a photograph nobody would ever want to hang on a wall. Her wedding dress suddenly looking less like a symbol of new beginnings and more like a costume from a play that had just lost its final act. Daniel could have left then. Every part of him wanted to walk out those same double doors, get in his car, and drive somewhere far away from the wreckage he'd just walked into. But something kept his feet planted on that marble floor. Some need to see the thing through to its actual end instead of just its collapse. "I want you to hear this clearly," he said, and his voice, though quiet, reached every corner of the silent ballroom. "I'm not here to humiliate you, even though I understand if that's what tonight looks like. I'm here because my bank called me during what I thought was a quiet Friday night and told me someone had spent $41,000 of my money without my knowledge. I came to find out who. I didn't expect to find a wedding. I didn't expect to find a dress, a cake, a room full of people who apparently knew more about my marriage ending than I did." He looked around the room slowly, meeting eyes he didn't recognize, faces that had come tonight believing they were witnessing love, not deception. "I loved my wife," Daniel continued. "For 6 years I believed we were building something. I worked late because I thought we were saving for a future, a house upgrade, maybe kids eventually, a life. I didn't know I was funding an exit." Vanessa's shoulders shook, silent sobs racking through the fabric of her gown. "I'm going to leave now," Daniel said. "I'm going to let you all finish whatever this is supposed to be, minus the parts that were never yours to plan. But before I go, I want everyone in this room to understand something clearly." He paused, letting the silence stretch, letting every eye in the ballroom find him. A marriage doesn't end when one person decides it's over in their own head. It ends when both people agree to close it. On paper, honestly, together. Until then, it's still real. Still standing. Still mine to protect, even when someone else has already stopped protecting it. He turned and started walking toward the exit, his footsteps steady against the marble, echoing through a silence so complete it felt like the whole building was holding its breath with him. "Daniel!" Vanessa called out, her voice raw and broken. "Please." "What happens now?" He stopped at the door, one hand resting against the frame, and looked back at her one last time. The roses, the collapsed cake table where someone had knocked over a tear in the chaos, the empty space where Marcus had stood minutes before, the mother sitting with her face buried in her hands. "Now," Daniel said, "you call a lawyer, because tomorrow morning I'm filing for the divorce you told everyone already happened, and this time it's going to be real." The drive home felt longer than it should have, the streetlights blurring past in long gold streaks, the radio playing something soft and forgettable that Daniel didn't have the energy to turn off. He didn't cry. Not yet. That would come later, alone, in the quiet of a house that suddenly felt too big for one person. His phone buzzed twice before he reached his driveway. The first was a text from an unknown number. Marcus, he'd later learn, asking if they could talk. Both of them apparently needing to understand exactly how deep the lie had gone. The second was from the bank, a final confirmation that the account freeze had held, that not another cent would leave his name without his permission. He sat in his driveway for a long moment before going inside, staring at the dark windows of the house he'd shared with a woman who had spent 8 months planning her exit while he was still planning their future. Marcus called 2 days later. Daniel almost didn't answer, staring at the unfamiliar number pulsing on his screen for 4 full rings before finally picking up. "I owe you an apology," Marcus said, his voice rougher than it had sounded in the ballroom, stripped of the polish and the tuxedo confidence. "I should have asked more questions. I saw things that didn't add up, and I let myself ignore them because I wanted the story she was telling me to be true." "I know exactly how that feels," Daniel said, and meant it. "She told me you two had been separated for over a year. She told me you'd moved to Chicago." Marcus let out a short, bitter laugh. "I actually looked up apartment listings there once, thinking maybe I'd visit the city sometime. Can you believe that? I was building a whole life around a lie I never once questioned." "We both were," Daniel said, "just from different sides of it." There was a long pause on the line, the kind that carried more understanding than words could. "For what it's worth," Marcus said finally, "I'm sorry. Genuinely. None of this was fair to you." "Yeah," Daniel said quietly. "None of it was fair to either of us." They didn't speak again after that call, not out of anger, but because there was nothing left between them that needed saying. Two strangers bound together by one woman's carefully constructed lie, now free to walk away from each other and never look back. What Daniel didn't know yet, sitting in that dark driveway 3 weeks before the divorce papers were even drafted, was that the $11,000 medical bill loan would turn out to be only the beginning of what the lawyers would eventually uncover. A second credit card he'd never known existed, opened in his name, with a balance that would make the wedding charges look small by comparison. But that discovery, and the fight that came with it, was still weeks away, waiting quietly in the paperwork like a second bomb that hadn't gone off yet. For now, he just sat in the dark, listening to the engine tick as it cooled, trying to remember the last time this house had actually felt like home instead of a stage set for someone else's second act. 3 weeks later, the divorce papers were filed. Real ones this time, signed by both parties, witnessed by lawyers instead of a wedding officiant. Vanessa moved out during a week Daniel spent staying with his brother, unable to watch the boxes leave the rooms they'd built together. Marcus, he heard through mutual acquaintances, never spoke to Vanessa again after that night. The trust between them shattered as completely as the champagne glass that had hit the marble floor the moment Daniel walked in. The bank, for its part, reversed every unauthorized charge within 30 days, flagging the account for fraud protection that would follow Daniel for the next 2 years, a small, strange comfort in the aftermath. Proof, at least, that some systems in his life still worked exactly the way they were supposed to. The second card surfaced exactly as the paperwork had hinted it might. Daniel's lawyer called him on a gray Tuesday afternoon, her voice careful in the way lawyers get when they're about to deliver news that will land hard. "There's a card opened in your name back in February," she said. "Balance of $19,000. Vanessa's signature is on the application, forged to match yours." Daniel closed his eyes and let the number settle over him like a weight he'd already half expected to carry. "File it," he said simply. "Everything. Let the report speak for itself." The identity theft claim moved faster than he expected, the forged signature obvious enough under review that the bank closed the account and reversed the balance within a month. No argument required. Vanessa never spoke of it directly, not once, though her lawyer's tone shifted noticeably softer after that filing landed on the table between them. Daniel rebuilt slowly. He took up running in the early mornings, the kind of quiet, repetitive motion that let his mind finally settle into the truth of what had happened instead of circling it endlessly. He talked to a therapist for the first time in his life, sat in a small beige office twice a week, and said out loud the things he'd been too proud to say to anyone, including himself. He learned gradually that trust wasn't something you got back all at once. It came in small, careful increments, the same way it had been taken from him. "You keep describing the ballroom like it happened to someone else," his therapist, a calm woman named Dr. Reyes, observed during one session, her notepad resting untouched on her knee. Third person. He walked in. He saw the sign. "What happens if you say it in first person?" Daniel sat with the question for a long moment, the office clock ticking softly on the wall. "I walked in," he said finally, the words landing heavier than he expected. "I saw my wife in a wedding dress, marrying someone else, on money I earned. And for about 10 seconds, before anyone noticed me, I actually thought I'd made a mistake. That I'd wandered into the wrong ballroom, the wrong night, someone else's disaster instead of my own. And when you realized it wasn't a mistake, I felt something break," he said, not loudly, quietly, like a bone setting wrong. Dr. Reyes nodded slowly. "That's grief, Daniel, not just for the marriage, for the version of your life you thought you were building." Those sessions became the framework he leaned on through the months that followed. Through the deposition where Vanessa's lawyer tried to argue the wedding expenses counted as shared marital spending. Through the afternoon, he finally sold the house and stood in the empty living room one last time, running his hand along a wall he'd painted himself years earlier. Through the nights, he lay awake replaying the sound of that champagne glass shattering, wondering how long the cracks had been forming before that moment finally split them wide open. Tobias helped him move into a smaller apartment across town, the two of them hauling boxes up 3 flights of stairs in the summer heat, sweat-soaked and mostly silent until Tobias finally broke it, setting down a box marked kitchen with a heavy thud. "You're allowed to be angry, you know," Tobias said. "You don't have to be calm about all of this all the time." "I know," Daniel said. "I just don't want the anger to be the only thing I carry out of this." "That's fair," Tobias said. "Just don't carry it alone either." A year later, standing at his brother's actual wedding, a real one, with real invitations and a real guest list that included his own name, Daniel watched the couple exchange vows under a different arch of white roses and felt something in his chest that had been closed for a long time finally open again. Not because he'd forgotten what happened, but because he finally understood that a room full of witnesses could hold 2 very different kinds of truth. The kind someone builds carefully out of lies, and the kind that survives plainly and quietly, long after the lie has burned itself out. His brother found him near the edge of the reception, both of them watching the new couple sway together under string lights that looked almost identical to the ones from that other ballroom a year earlier. "You okay?" his brother asked quietly. "I know weddings probably aren't easy for you right now." "Honestly," Daniel said, surprising himself with how true it felt, "I'm better than okay. I spent a long time thinking that night ended something in me. Standing here, I think it actually started something instead." "Yeah? I stopped waiting for someone else to hand me a version of my life I could trust," Daniel said. "I started building one myself, slower, steadier, real." His brother clapped a hand on his shoulder, and the two of them stood there a while longer, saying nothing else, needing nothing else. Later that night, a young woman Daniel had never met, a friend of the bride, seated 2 tables over during dinner, asked him, half joking, whether he believed in second chances after everything he'd apparently been through. He thought about the question longer than the moment probably called for. "I believe in earned trust," he said finally. "Not given, earned, slowly, honestly, one true thing at a time." She smiled at that, and for the first time in a long while, Daniel let himself smile back without checking first for the catch. "Her name was Mia," she told him a moment later, extending a hand still faintly smudged with the mascara she'd wiped away, laughing at someone's toast. She was a photographer, she said, currently losing a quiet war with the reception's terrible lighting. Daniel laughed, an easy, unguarded sound he hadn't heard come out of himself in over a year. And for the rest of the night, he caught himself glancing toward her table more than once, not out of hunger to fill a space, but out of something simpler and stranger. Curiosity, plain and unafraid, the kind he hadn't trusted himself to feel in a long time. He didn't ask for her number. He wasn't ready to call it anything yet, and he'd learned the hard way what happens when you rush a name onto something before it's earned one. But when Mia stood to leave near the end of the night, she slid a folded cocktail napkin across the table without a word. Daniel opened it after she'd gone. A phone number, and beneath it, 4 words in quick, looping handwriting. No catch, I promise. He folded the napkin carefully and tucked it into his jacket pocket, right over his heart, and stood there a moment longer under the string lights, feeling something unfamiliar settle into his chest. Not certainty, not yet, but the quiet, open-ended shape of a beginning. For the first time since that ballroom, Daniel let himself wonder what came next instead of bracing for it. Thank you for staying with Daniel all the way to the end. If this story moved you, drop a comment and tell me which moment hit hardest. The bank call, the ballroom, or that napkin at the very end. Hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because trust, once it's broken, doesn't come back all at once. It comes back one true thing at a time. See you in the next story.